where we're going to examine the table, look at kind of the pattern for x and y, decide if it's direct or inverse, and then once we make that decision, figure out the exact equation, and then use the exact equation to solve some more problems. I would strongly encourage you to watch the first video, because we're going to use some of the exact same concepts we used in the first video, and it might be really helpful just in case you get lost. All right, let's get started. Let's look at our table. We notice that x increases steadily, increases by 2, increases by 2, increases by 2, increases by 2. So we have our steady increase in x. If we look at y, y does not increase. In fact, y decreases. 256 to 128, that's a decrease. 128 to 85, that's a decrease. 85 to 64 is a decrease. 64 to 51.2 is a decrease. So as x steadily increases, y decreases. And not only does it decreases at a decreasing rate. The initial drop is pretty large, but the decrease down here is pretty small. So it's the amount we're decreasing by also decreases. That makes this inverse. That's exactly what inverse variation means. Inverse, and our reason is as x increases, y, oops, I wrote increasing. I was getting ahead of myself. Sorry for the typo. As x increases, y decreases at a decreasing rate. And I left off the word steadily. Really, we want to say as x steadily increases. It's a common mistake to leave that off. It's a common mistake even I made. So as x increases, y decreases at a decreasing rate. Question B says, what's the constant of proportionality in this case? Well, this is an inverse variation situation. So we know that it has this type of equation. Y equals k divided by x. We know we're going to use a y. We know we're going to use an x. What we don't know is what number we're going to use for k. In other words, what number is our constant of proportionality? In order to figure that out, what we're going to do is take any column. Could be this column, could be this column, it doesn't really matter. Could be the second column. We just need one x and one y, or one x and one y. Let's use column 2. Instead of y, we're going to use 128. Instead of x, we're going to use 4, because it's at 4 for the x value. And now we have an equation that we can solve because we only have one unknown. We want to get rid of divide by 4. We multiply by 4. And then on this side, we need to multiply by 4. And so we have 4 times 128. I think that's 512. And that's our k value. So here's the deal. Once we know it's inverse, we know it has this type of equation. That's a key step. If it has this type of equation, and you plug in a number here and a number here for y and x, that'll give you your k, that'll give you your constant of proportionality. C says assume the same relationship. What would be the value of y if x equals 50? Now I know that you could probably look at the table and figure out a pattern and try to figure out how to kind of move over to x equals 50. But really we should be using this equation to solve. So we don't know y. We do know, hey look, we're always going to use 512. That's why we call it constant. It's always there. It's always 512. It's constantly 512. What changes, what varies, because it's a variable, that's what variable means, is x. So we plug this in. We're going to divide. Off the top of my head, I don't quite remember what 512 divided by 50 is. Fortunately, I have my graphing calculator handy. Wouldn't you know it, it's 10.24. Did you know that? So if we plug in 50 for x, we solve for y. We're going to do the same thing here, except this time we know 10 is the y value. We know k is 500 because it's constant. It's always 512. And then what we don't know is x. These are a little bit unusual. Usually, we leave the variable in place and we move the numbers. This is that one rare case, and I'm just going to rewrite it. Rewrite the same thing. Where anytime you have divide by x, a good first step is multiply by x, because they'll undo each other. And then we need to multiply by x on the same side to keep that equation balanced. And so we have x times 10, that's 10x. And on the right side we have 512. Now we got to solve for x, we want to divide by 10, divide by 10. And what we get is x equals 51.2. Which should not be a surprise because that's actually in the table already. I think in the actual homework assignment, it doesn't work out like that. It's not something already in the table, so you have to do this process. It's nice to know that we're correct because I think I wasn't paying attention when I wrote this. I didn't realize the answer was already in the table. But it doesn't matter, it's still a really good example because once again, we know it's inverse, so we know it's got this shape to it. We know 512 is our constant because of the work we did in part B. And then if we plug in 10 for y, we can set up and solve this equation using these steps to find the value of x. Thank you for watching these two videos. I think it's an awesome start that you're already recognizing, hey, if I'm stuck on homework, let me do my best to figure it out. I really appreciate it. I hope this helps. If you're still unable to do the homework, let me know. I'll make a better video. But in the meantime, thanks.